Hi everyone, this is a video comparing the Sargo and Targa commuter boats, which you see on the screen here, with a boat you've never heard of. That comes from Norway and that costs less in diesel, that has the same interior space, and that is a third less in price. Let me just give you the summary because I don't like, just like you, those videos where you get um, a lot of information before you get the summary. Here's the summary first. Looking for the ideal small cabin cruiser that's a bit fast. If you compare the Sargo and the Targa with the Viknes from Norway, I'll explain what that is because you've never heard of it, because they just don't make any advertisements outside of Norway, really. It's a boat that has the same interior space as these walk-around commuters from Finland, the Sargo Tara and Nordstar. You get the same amount of interior space in a 9-meter thickness as in a 10-meter Targa or Sargo. You get less berthing fees. You get less maintenance cost. Because unlike the Targa and the Sargo, who have Volvos with what's called sail drives, you get a Yanmar engine, a very reliable marine engine with a straight shaft. Because of the smaller length but the same interior and exterior space, you have a lot less weight. You need less horsepower. You've got half the diesel use. That was important to me as well, but I'll get into the objectives in a second. I'm just giving you the conclusion first so you can decide to look for the detail or move on to another video. It's also about less weight. The walkarounds always have a higher weight. Of course, a big difference is the seakeeping. The Targa and the Sargo are commuters designed with a deep V. They're more kind in a bit of a seaway. The Viknes has a semi-planing hull with a keel and a bluff round bow. So it's a bit of a different ball game. You can't really compare two against each other, but the Viknes costs a third less. It uses less diesel and it gives you more interior space for the length. So that is the conclusion. Let's go back right to the beginning and I'll talk about things in chapters. I have sailed all my life with sailboats, quite big sailboats. Loved that, still do quite a bit of that. But I wanted something that has a nice big wheelhouse for nice views and all year round use. I still wanted a motorboat if I'm going to switch to a motorboat from a sailboat. Very embarrassing, of course, to be seaworthy. The main point of getting a little motorboat is it's nice that it's quick, right? Instead of the 5, 6, 7 knots you do with a sailboat, this boat and similar boats will do 20 knots. Which is 3 times as fast, so you can get places easier and quicker. You also don't have much draught, you don't need much depth of water, so it's quite fun. But the drawback is don't make them too big because they become too heavy and they need massive engines, which is massive maintenance, massive diesel. So I wanted something that was a little bit eco-friendly, a bit small, particularly for inland use. I've always sailed at sea with my sailboats. Now, being small, as in 9 or 10 meters only, is very important because you get less weight, you have less diesel use, but also for mucking about inland, visiting old towns in my native Holland, where I would like to explore a bit with my now 9-year-old daughter. It's better to have a smaller boat so you can get right into the heart of these, at times 1,000-year-old towns with their little canals and little marinas. My requirements for the interior were like, 2 good double cabins, no V berths because, you lie on some infill cushion. I just want like a comfortable double cabin and one for my daughter as well. A good bathroom with a nice hot shower. doesn't need to be big. I've had enough big boats as well. Big boat means big maintenance, and if you've been polishing for 3 days to make your catamaran, that's like 15 meters look good again, then you think, oh my goodness, not bad to have a smaller boat. The exterior, I just want like a nice cockpit to sit in a bit. And I really, having sailed to the Med, of course, I always want a bimini, preference for a hard bimini, like a GRP bimini, instead of something floppy or a tent, because living in tents isn't great. And it needs to have a low air draft for clearing bridges that have a low height in Holland. So no flybridge and no radars and antennas. And to be fair, these days, if you've got a AIS on your display, you don't really need radar. GPS map with other boats displayed as little triangles with your AIS indicating speed and direction. That's good enough. So who needs a radar anyway? Right, now, what am I talking about exactly? We are talking about, let's see the competition. We are looking at these kinds of boats. Sargo is one from Finland. The Targa is a classic. The most well-known model is the Targa 32. These boats are designed to walk around the wheelhouse, but that creates a lot of loss of space because a lot of your width goes into these areas I'm pointing at right now. They are not on the same level as Sargo and Targa. Main thing is, if you look at these guys, the main mistake is the hull is very, very low, as you can see. So the wheelhouse is quite high, the hull is low. They do what they can to photograph it from other angles, mostly from above, to make it look cool, like you see here with the 42, etc. But if you look from the side, especially if it's lying next to a Sargo or Targa, you think, my God, it looks a bit like a misfit. Comparison material that I accidentally found on a delivery trip to Norway is the Viknes. Now, you've never heard of these guys. They've only started their YouTube channel a year ago. They still hilariously make videos that are exclusively in Norwegian. Meet Christian. And I've met him as well. Family company, second generation. His father developed this sort of bluff bow looking little thing. As you can see, it's got a very round bow. It's a semi-planing hull, not a deep V. Because it's round and it hasn't got walk-through, it's got a lot more interior space. You get an interior that's quite similar to the Sargo and the Targa. And they all have the same. They've got this like U settee, the horseshoe shape. They've got the kitchen, a little bit galley bit with a sink offset to the side. And then you normally have these side doors, which admittedly you don't have here, but the windows you see here can fully open and slide back. You can stick your hand out, operate a fender, take a line. It's not a big deal. And as standard also, there's a big cockpit with this outside wheel, which is standard. No extra price like with all the others. And there you kind of stand and operate the boat from the cockpit. And having sailed one last summer, because Christian, the CEO of Viknes, said, look, just rent one for me for a week or two and see what you think. And I did. And I was very impressed also by the build quality. And again, just to explain on the walk-around concept, what you see in the cockpit is you've got these two steps leading up to the deck. So instead of walking around your boat, you just two steps up and you don't lose all that interior space and you don't have to go down, walkway and up with your GRP, which saves a lot of constructional strength nightmares and particularly weight. So I'm going to compare the Sargo and the Targa, which are nearly a meter longer each, with the Viknes 930. Going to talk about engines, hulls, comfort, size, the works. This, what you're looking at, is the Sargo 31. It's 10 meters and it's 3.3 wide. And you can see indeed that the wheelhouse level of the interior, which again, I said V-burns aren't great because even if you put the infil in, you get like a cushion that you feel on your back all night long. So not a fan of that. Now, 10 meters, 3.3 wide. You lose a wall of width there. And you're looking at least 5,100 kilos in weight. Going to the next slide, we've got the Viknes 930. It is not 3.3 wide, but 3.1 wide. But as you can clearly see on the middle picture here, the middle diagram, you can see that there's a very narrow walkway with even a good weather rail to hold onto. You could even on a pilot boat forget about that whole outside railing and just have a railing on the roof and on the foredeck that pilots hold onto because they never want a railing that sticks up. If they come alongside, it will only get like dinged by the big ship that they are climbing up into. Now, layout's quite similar. You got the full cabin, thankfully not a V-berth, but a nice 125 wide centimeters by 200 meter bed. And again, it's not 180 or 190, it's 200 centimeters. Very nice, big, proper bed. And you've got one bed also under the cabin sole that's accessed from this central area opposite the washroom, which has a pull-out shower, small but simple. And again, all these commuters, also the Finnish Targa and Sargo, they just got a small bathroom. But how much time do you really spend in there? Then the middle picture you can see shows the wheelhouse layout, which is identical to the others, but indeed, admittedly, there's no side doors left and right, which the Sargo and the Targa both have, but there's just the aft door. Now, Sargos and Targas have only recently come around to the aft door. They used to have only side doors, and then you walked around to the cockpit. Cockpit's quite generous as a bathing platform, and let's put together the Sargo 31, which is 60 centimeters bigger. So I've tried to scale that so you can see it. And you see that the wheelhouse area, the sofas and the seating and the steering and the galley, they're not that much bigger at all. Now, added benefit is, which I like in the Viknes 930 over the Sargo and the Targa, is neither of these, Sargo and Targa, have a covered hard bimini over the external cockpit, which you kind of like in the summer. Even if you put one on, you can get it as an option with the Sargo, something that sticks out a little bit. But I like that with the Viknes, it goes full width. And it's got stanchions at the back. Normally, the Viknes comes with a cloth roof. You see it indeed here. But I don't really like that, so I've ordered one which they still make for very, very northerly climates that has a fixed GRP bimini. Now let's compare the 10 meter long Sargo 31 that costs at least 100,000 more than the Viknes 930, also a factor. And you'll see that the accommodation below the double and the double are nearly identical in size. So enough of that. Here again, you can see the clever sliding roof. It is clever, but it is cloth and it will rot in a few years, I fear. So I'm having I'd rather have like, a fixed GRP roof. Moving on. How did I even find Viknes? I found it because I delivered a big powercat that's made out of aluminium built by my friend Stephen Weatherly in his shipyard at the Isle of Wight. And this is the first one of this beautiful design. He's got a commercial, sort of like offshore wind farm vessel catamaran firm designing it. So it's got commercial vessel pedigree. I've always liked catamarans because they're much more efficient through the water. So what you get with a big cat like this is indeed you need much less horsepower. And also this had straight shafts, but it was too big to go through the inland waterways of Holland. This is a 15-meter boat. It's absolutely gigantic. I should actually find a picture of me standing next to it, but it's massive. But it's beautiful. I delivered that to Norway this summer from the UK. It was brand new, 2,000 nautical miles to Tromsø, where this guy who helped me to bring it across, it was just me and him. He's called Hakon. He does whale watching tours up way north, and he saw this design, kept calling Steve Weatherly and said, look, I want that boat. I want that boat. It's ideal for what I'm doing. So here you see the boat in action. This is off Lindesnes. Hey, Hakon. He's now sailing that boat regularly, nearly every day in Tromsø, in the fjords there to watch whales. There's a lot less waves there because you're always sheltered in those beautiful waterways up in Norway. But anyway, so let's bring this thing across Norway. Never been to Norway in my life. We go up north, and in these little towns, I come across the Viknes, 930s, 1030s. That's a bit of video of us in the middle of the North Sea, past the point of no return, and then a German warship decides to bother us. You can see that video on Sailing Waterworld Cat. Warship nearly shoots at us. Thankfully, they didn't. Anyway, so on the way to Norway, came across this crazy, crazy boat called the Viknes 930. It's not beautiful, has a bit of a look of a fishing vessel, but again, not walk around, bluff bow, and that bluff bow was quite useful because it gives you more interior space. So here, have a good look at the boat. The tent on the back, yeah, it always rains in Norway, so you need some rain protection. Nice big opening glass hatch in your wheelhouse. What you're looking at is the 1030, not the 930 I'm talking about. This is a bit bigger, like 10.6 meters. They've made a beautiful new version called the V10, Viknes 10. Lots of videos on that on the Viknes website. Good boat, but 440 horsepower, straight shaft, drink 60, 70, 80 liters an hour. Not good. And a bit too big for the Netherlands, so that was not of interest. Now, in the comparison with Nordstar Sargo Targa, I recommend a video by Pro Kater, the channel. He compares the Sargo 31 with the Targa 30 with the Nordstar Patrol. Now, all want to know about, of course, and that is the price and the comparison. And what you can see on this video, now that we're talking about, is indeed that walk around. That's the Nordstar, the one with low hull. It sits a bit too low in the water. But that's the kind of cockpit you see in the back. Quite comparable to the Viknes 930. Target 30.1, just give you an idea of the interior. Cabin is quite small. You can have what's called a comfort 4 cabin where they make it a bit bigger, but it is really quite cramped. Aft cabin, that houses the loo as well. So you got your shower / toilet in there. A double and like half a single for a child kind of thing. Beautiful boat, don't get me wrong. And I'd love to have one. But again, Same interior space, um, bigger fore cabin to sleep in. It's just a different ball game. And these side doors, I don't like the squeezed feel of the narrow wheelhouse. The Viknes 930 to just give you an air of that interior. Whilst we're at it, as you can see, looks quite the same. No side doors though, but a fully sliding windows. You can stick your hand out, hang fenders, accept lines. And again, it's only a 9.5 meter boat, so you got your bow thruster. They even make them with the stern thruster, but I would save the way to not bother with that. A bit too old-fashioned, I guess. Same interior layout. You get the bench that switches from back to forth, so you can have a couple of people sitting there looking forward when you're on the move. Nice, nice big, full width, well protected, deep cockpit. Also, oddly enough, it sits a bit deeper than the Sargo and the Targa. Whole different feel when you're in that cockpit outside. Um, some detail on the interior. And again, it looks a bit bluff bow, a bit of an old man's boat. Doesn't look very sexy compared to the Sargo and the Targa with their deep V hulls, doing high speeds. But again, you got the Yanmar, you got the straight shaft. Quick word about the Yanmar and the Volvo. I've had lots of sailing catamarans with either Yanmars, Lagoon, new boats always nearly, and a Naughty Tech which had two Volvos in there. Any boat I've ever had with a Volvo has had problems, regardless of whether they're new or old. It's always electronics. It's always and it's a Volvo, so it's obscenely expensive. And again, the big problem with the Volvo is you've got that sail drive. That sail drive, which you can see here, is not a straight shaft. Again, just to explain, that is a straight shaft behind a Yanmar. There's very little to go wrong. You got to line it up properly, of course. That is important, yes. But basically, there not being a straight shaft means you've got the engine and you can place the engine closer to the end of the boat. So in terms of the layout, you do see, comparing the Sargo and the Targa, that the Sargos and the Targas can push their wheelhouse a bit further back. You see wheelhouse is further back here. Here you see the wheelhouse really in the middle because they're accommodating that Yanmar that you can see there with that straight shaft. But there's another bunch of things that are relevant. And number one, the Volvo is much more finicky and vulnerable. It can actually tilt up and down. So there's a lot of it's called a Z-drive because of the shape. There's a lot of bearings and things that can go wrong and moving parts. It's not a straight shaft going from the engine to the prop. No, it goes via lots of gears and lots of strange angles that are beautifully designed but complex and therefore vulnerable. I'm not a technical guy, so correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But it's from what I hear, especially if you got a second-hand one, it's a nightmare. And it's expensive. There's another big drawback that made me decide against this and look for something else than the Sargo Targa range, and that is the fact that there is a bellows in here that sort of can bend with the whole unit that goes up and down, tilting if you wanted to. That's made out of rubber, bellows with air in it, and that means you cannot leave that boat in the water in the wintertime if you needed to. That's odd because these things are called commuters and they're used a lot as a car in Norway to go to work because they've got lots of lovely deep water and these beautiful rocks that you can anchor. So they always anchor from behind rather than the front because they can then get right up to the rock and hop off using those handholds. It's stunning country. I can recommend anyone to go there and do a bit of boating. It rains all the time though, and it's pretty cold. But basically, that's why you got the wheelhouse, and that's not a feature which I like of an all-season boat like the Viknes. is it comes with a really good heater. These guys know up there what they're doing. Now, so I'm traveling up north on that big catamaran, finding my way. Every marina I come to, I see this Viknes. And I walk up to an owner and I say, God, what is this? My mate Hakon, who was driving, already said, it's a good boat. It's a bad weather boat, were his exact words. And the slogan of Viknes is it built for the North Sea. And having sailed one for a few weeks and talked to a lot of owners on the way north, I do agree. Like I saw, one of the first I saw was at 10:30. It looked like it was new. And I said, gosh, how old is this boat? He said, it's 15 years old. I couldn't believe it. So they spare no expense. They've got good materials. They've got no untreated wood that you need to lacquer. A few words about the price. And I'll talk a bit about the engines as well to finish off. Here we have the prices. Sargo 31, Targa 30.1, the little bit bigger 10.8 meter Targa 32, and the Viknes 930. Sargo and Targa are all round the 300 mark in base price, excluding VAT in euros, where the Viknes is 200,000. So that's quite something. I also opted for the 250 horsepower engine on the advice of Christian, the CEO of Viknes, because it's less diesel, a little bit more eco-friendly, and it weighs 388 kilos instead of the standard 320 8-cylinder Yanmar weighing 550 kilos engine and gearbox. So again, you see in the comparison that the Viknes is 1,000 kilos lighter. That means a lot less diesel use. It's a sort of a fifth lighter than the rest. So that's the price. We can also talk a bit about the diesel usage. With the 250 horsepower and the 4,000 odd kilo Viknes 930, if I calculate things out, I come at 1.5, 1.7 liters per nautical mile. We'll see how that performs in practice, really. This is based on a 930 with a 320 8-cylinder. I just compared the Yanmar curves and came out to these numbers. If you compare that to the Sargo 31, for instance, you got this interesting graph here that shows you a few single engine options. I'll come to single or twin engine in a second. You come out at sort of the comparable 1.5 to 1.7 area. Boat's a bit heavier, but you got the Volvo engine, which for all its faults is more efficient in the water than a shaft drive. They even turn this around to make the propellers face forward. You call those IPS drives. With that double prop, that is a beautiful design. But again, you can't leave it in the wintertime in freezing water. It needs ridiculously expensive maintenance of several thousand euros a year per engine. So if you got two of them, that's a lot more cost as well. On the subject of two engines, some people say, you're going to see, why don't you have two engines instead of one? It's a small boat. It's a lot of horsepower. It's extra maintenance. Every fishing boat has got a single engine, pretty much. I just wish they would start developing foiling motorboats. They'd be quicker, more comfortable in a seaway. They would use less energy, I would hope, once they're up on their foils. Issue you also have is if you use your boat in inland waterways a lot, you see these are the two lines that relate to the twin D4 260 or 300 engines by Volvo in the region of the horizontal axis where you go under 8 knots, which happens a lot, of course, in inland waterways. Twin engines are not that great. But again, I'm not an expert, so correct me if I'm wrong. Use the comments, let me know. I'm just trying to help you with the result of a year and a half worth of research into what's the right small motorboat that's seaworthy but can still go inland waterways and is a bit of an all-weather boat. From Scandinavia with a good heater and good design. That's what I did this for. Right. So what's left? A quick word on why I picked the shipyard. Viknes Saga of Sweden, a small boat builder, has gone belly up. We've got Viksund, also near Bergen. They went belly up as well. Skilzo was a brand taken off by Viknes. Now, Christian and Gisle, his brother was 4 years in Southampton in university for designing leisure boats. So he really knows what he's talking about. They've developed the Viknes 10, which you see on screen here, completely together. They're financially sound, as far as I could trace back. They've got their own facilities. They're second generation. They've sold a lot of boats. They've really hit with the sort of old-fashioned fishing boat look, patrol boat look with the bluff bow of the Viknes range. I'll show you a few more here. We got the Viknes 930. We got the Viknes 1030. You see them absolutely everywhere. They're unbreakable. As an afterthought, I would say, I wish indeed there was more interior space, especially in cold countries, and less cockpit space. But when I asked that to Christian, he said, look, we do have that shaft drive. We do want to have good sound insulation. That's why indeed we draw the line at halfway. So that's the honest explanation. Guys working at the factory, I checked that out as well. In Norway, it's a rich country. You can, have any job you like, really. So if you're working at Viknes, you're working there because you like what you're doing. I hope they make Powerboat of the Year. It is an astounding boat for the length. It's 10.6 meters. Again, the bluff bow. The interior is amazing. It's got a palatial forecabin inside. It's got 3 cabins even, not the usual 2. It's got lots of clever little things that you really want in there when you use the boat a lot, like indeed what you see right now. The clears can be stored away, lots of storage space that's in the clever places. Very well thought out boat. They cleverly based it on the same hull mold as the Skilzo 35. They've taken over Skilzo a few years ago. They make that now. Big garage, big space. I don't like the Alpi oak so much. That's something personal. I love the mahogany that's in the 930, but call me old fashioned. This is cabin number 3 in the Viknes 10. They're at the Düsseldorf Boat Show. If you're there, go have a look. It's the first time since 10 years that they're there because, again, they don't come out of Norway much. They sell 80 boats a year already with about 80 people in their factory. Amazing result, and they do that very well. Very good subcontractors on stainless steel and interior as well. I noticed, and again, Viknes 10, that's the single cabin in the middle, but the fore cabin and the side cabin, cabin 2 and 3, oh my God, they're nice and big. Very nice, big palatial bathroom as well. That's cleverly laid out. A whole big difference from the old similar sized 1030 and the flagship 1080. But it was a bit too big for me for Holland, and it had like a big 440 horsepower Yanmar engine that I find a bit too eco-unfriendly. I can't really bear that. But beautifully designed boat, and let's hope they design some boats as well in the future that have more interior space and less exterior space. Last funny item. When I said to them, I've never heard of you. They're only in Norway. They didn't do things in English. I said, look, since a year, we have a YouTube channel. So this is what you see here. And indeed, when I had a look at that this summer, I said, look, it's still all in Norwegian language. I'm Dutch. I can translate it a little bit and understand what you're saying, but said, no, I'll get around. So 12 days ago, and I'm making this video in a very rainy, dark England in the deepest depth of January. I see that indeed 12 days ago, on a sunshiny day, he's made 2 walkthrough videos in English. Um, I do think they're making an absolute great effort, in the sense that what you see here is old chap that's got a Michelin star restaurant near Bergen, and he uses his Viknes Skilzo, beautiful flagship, the biggest one, to fish for fresh seafood from his boat, the Skilzo, that he runs himself. And it's amazing to see indeed the delicacies that he makes and cooks and tells you how to cook. And then he goes and dives off the back of the boat, catches this fresh stuff, and cuts it up and serves it up to his customers. It's quite something. Here, look at that. The best of sailing in Norway, all fresh stuff that comes straight from the sea. And that's restaurant Cornelius in Bergen. It's an amazing place to sail Norway. I recommend it to you all. Deep water, beautiful nature, and indeed, you know, all this stuff is there to be found.